they say that 30% or more of leaders are not engaged. Now, how can you engage other people if you're not engaged yourself?
As I work with organisations around the country, around the world, what I've found is there seem to be three really big issues. How do we get people to buy into change? How do we keep our workforce engaged? And how do we retain great people? It really does start with you. If you've got a leader that people trust and you are that leader who people want to follow and they buy into what you're saying, it's because you've mastered the ability to really connect with them. When I was living in Australia, the leader that I had was incredible. She was so genuine and so authentic, and it was easy for me to follow her.
Have you ever just felt so strongly about a leader that you personally have had that you would have walked on water for that person, and you've stayed because of that person?
It is all about the human element. It always is about people. And ultimately, it is the leader who is responsible.
There's such a focus on engaging the workforce. Glad you're here. Thanks for coming. You're really special. I mean, what does that do? Nothing. What is it that makes people want to stay? People want to be valued. People want to be heard. People want to be appreciated. People want to be understood.
Are you that kind of leader?
It was a great way to start our conference.
It was so inspiring.
It was excellent and just what we needed.
The companies that I've worked with, they really understand what this workforce wants and needs to be successful.
Complacency is the enemy of success. It's very easy to say, you know what, we're doing well, but we also need to be aware of what happens when we stay in the status quo. Change isn't logical. Change is emotional.
It's one thing to have the words, but we need to back it up with action. So when a leader in an organisation focuses on what's within their control, that makes you unstoppable.
What's 100% within our control is having the best work environment that we can have, being the best of us that we can be, having the best relationships that we can have. All of that is 100% within our control. That's the most exciting part.
Well, good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dune Friends. My name is Dune Nguyen. I'm your host today, and we have a wonderful guest joining us from the beautiful British Columbia in Canada here, which is next province over where I am today in Alberta. And so we have Michelle Ray joining us. Michelle, can you still hear me in the green room there, my friend? All right. Hopefully you can still hear me, Michelle, because, when we have you on the screen here, we'll be able to hear your audio. So born in Australia and now residing in Vancouver, Michelle Ray is an award-winning international leadership keynote speaker, entrepreneur, author, and educator who advocates the importance of developing outstanding future-ready leaders, change agents, and engaged teams. She is the founder of Lead Yourself First Enterprises and has worked with renowned corporations, all levels of government, as well as numerous business associations as a respected expert and thought leader for the many, more than 25 years. Michelle is one of only 1,500 people who worldwide to have earned the Certified Speaking Professional, CSP, and as well as the Certified Virtual Presenter designations. When she isn't in lockdown, Michelle loves traveling and going to as many NHL games as possible. Her next book, due for release in 2021, will be loaded with strategies to help leaders survive and thrive in the rapidly changing world. So with that introduction, friends, please help me in welcoming our guest today, Michelle Ray. How are you doing today, Michelle? You are well, I hope?
I am. I hope you can hear me now.
You bet. Yeah. Technology being what it is, we're at the mercy of a lot of different components there. So tell me, my friend, how have you been? Actually, it's just a few days ago that I saw you at the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, CAPS convention. Tell us, what are you up to these days, my friend?
Well, it was an amazing experience to be keynoting at my Professional Speakers Association event. And, you know, things normally at this time of the year tend to die down. I will be receiving the manuscript for my second book for what's called the second pass. So I'm going to be pretty busy because this is the edit stage, and I've gone through one substantive edit, which most authors go through, and now I'm going to go through the second stage. But by the end of January, that kind of heavy lifting with the book will all be finished. So I'm looking forward to launching it in the later part of 2021 with my publisher, Page 2 Books. So that's me very busy, Dune.
Well, busy is good, they say. Busy is good, right? Keeps us out of trouble and keep us engaged. And so tell us about the books. You've written a few books along the way, and actually, I would love to hear the story of how you got into speaking. When did you come to the conclusion that speaking was going to be your life's work in terms of helping people with, again, developing themselves and leadership and whatnot?
Well, I think like a lot of people, I had with a very, well, several toxic leaders. And the last one was the catalyst for me to make the decision to go out into the world of self-employment, because I realized that speaking was something that I had done in previous jobs, including that last one. So I felt that with the right opportunity, I could parlay my skills into something that would help me to be successful on my own. And since that time, I've never looked back, Dune. So really bad leadership that made me leave my job and start my business. And you know, since then, I've taken that experience as well as others, good and bad, to help other leaders be outstanding at what they do and to lead themselves.
Wonderful. Now, as this often is the case, some of our frustrations in life, some of our down moments become our kind of a springboard to kind of to the next level of work, next level of life, typically, right?
Yes, exactly. And that was just after I emigrated to Canada. It was the job that I thought was my dreams. It was with the same non-profit organisation that I worked in Australia. This is way before the internet. And it was interesting because I'd written a letter to this organisation saying, I've worked with you, I'd love to work with you. And it was evident fairly quickly that not all leaders are the same, and the experiences couldn't. So it was a bit of a shock, and it took me a while to adjust to that. And I did stick it out for a while because I wanted to make it as successful as I could for myself and for the organisation. But eventually, I realised, as I mentioned, that it was time.
Again, life is full of ups and downs, and sometimes some of our down moments are really an opportunity to evolve. And so, Michelle, tell us, in terms of during the COVID time here, was there a story of kind of the refocusing that you committed to that allows you to continue being productive and being very engaged?
Well, I've just, made it a goal to try to self-productive. And, I think you and I were talking earlier about the fact that being able to learn how to use the virtual realm effectively is something I'm pretty proud of. It wasn't something that I was that comfortable with or really knew very much about before. So, I think for many people in the speaking profession, it was hard for a number of us early on, and some of us were kind of kicking and screaming all the way. But then eventually, you realize that it's all how you decide to see it. Is it going to be a challenge? Is it going to be an opportunity? And, so I've done whatever I could to learn how to master it and have had success with my clients. And you've been very kind helping me with sound. I don't exactly know what the heck is going on today, but it's been positive in that sense that I've learned something new, and I've been able to work with different clients and help them to give their teams and their leaders some great experiences online.
Yeah. So, in other words, learning is one of our most important asset, the ability to learn, the ability to, again, to just figure out different things. And I commend you for committing to doing that. And I see the book behind there. Maybe tell us a little bit more about Lead Yourself First as a book. Tell us the background. Tell us how you came about deciding to write it. And tell us anything else that you wanted to share about the Lead Yourself First book.
Yes. Well, I think like a lot of people, you have aspirations of writing a book. And my father passed away in 2011, and in April 2011. And, prior to that, I'd been talking about it. And then I thought, I think I did a post on LinkedIn from a professional. Are you sick and tired of having written that book yet? You've got the book in you. And I decided that was the momentum that I needed. Went to a book writing in Toronto. I was the only person that flew in for it. Everybody else was local. And set about that goal of being on that after that weekend. And interestingly, we were one of the first cyberspace groups that I'm aware of. We met regularly for over a year. And I believe I finished my process in about 10 months, and I was very excited to have accomplished that. So the book, Lead Yourself First, Indispensable Lessons in Business and in Life, was originally self-published, had a slightly different subtitle, and then about a year and a half later, a publisher came along, John Hunt.
So if you could share a couple of kind of insights from the book, that would be awesome. If you could share, what's one of the stories or one of the concepts that you discuss in the book. That would be great if you cover something like that.
Thank you, Dune. And thank you to everyone for your incredible patience. I don't exactly know what's going on. I broadcast live right through that virtual conference last week with no problems, and on all my virtual events with no problems. I don't know what's going on. One great story from the book. Well, it's one that I talk about and wrote about actually for the Globe and Mail's Leadership Lab column, which I did for a number of years. But this particular story was all about what I called cold calling Catwoman. And it was many years ago when I was still living in Australia, and I was working in the advertising industry, and I was a sales manager for a cinema advertising company. And the country, just like many other countries in the world, was in the midst of a very deep recession. But the company that I was working with landed an incredible opportunity to sell advertising in what was then the biggest cinema complex that had ever been built in the Southern Hemisphere. So the interesting thing about that time was that although we landed that multi-million-dollar opportunity to sell advertising, many of the local clientele that we had were really suffering. These were small businesses that we and my team were calling upon to advertise their businesses on the big screen. And, many of them were just interested in surviving. They weren't interested in spending money on advertising. So my team was struggling, and I knew that it was important for me to be able to practice what I teach, which is to set the right example. So I went out there into this community where the cinema complex was being built, and I tried my hand at cold calling, and the first call didn't go very well. So I ended up feeling very sorry for myself, sitting in my car, watching the windshield wipers going back and forth. And I started to pray for inspiration. And I said, God, if you're listening to me, I'm willing to do anything, even if it's illegal or immoral. Show me what to do. And I opened my eyes, and on the other side of the street, there was a store that had a flashing neon sign that said costumes for hire. And I went running across the street having an out-of-body experience into this store. And 1 minute I was dressed as Michelle Ray, the sales manager, and the next I was cold calling Catwoman. And I went about calling on businesses dressed up as Catwoman because the movie Batman had just been released. So I told everybody I was from the movies. And it was an unbelievable experience. The moral of the story wasn't necessarily about the success that I had calling on businesses. It was all about the change in my psyche and what I had been telling myself about what was possible. And it was a great experience. So that's what happened.
Thank you for sharing that story. And when you were sharing that story, I was thinking of this photo that I have of you in the cat lady.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that. Some of the details around what made you to decide to do that advertising thing, or.
Yeah. So I made a decision to go out and go cold calling to show myself, probably more than anything, and my team what was possible, and it was a great success. And I had no idea at the time that after I had that experience, I could never have predicted that I was going to be living in Canada at the time, and that many, many years later, the Globe and Mail who would publish that story. And it was just a wonderful callback, wonderful throwback to that time, Dune.
Yeah. Again, the idea of there's a theme here, and that is when you're pushed to the corner and you are a little bit desperate as to what move to take next. Sometimes innovation and courage comes in. Sometimes you are able to reach deep and find that idea that you otherwise wouldn't have thought of, right?
Exactly. And the same thing goes for the article in and of itself. And that opportunity came about because I published the book. So it was very exciting.
Yeah.
They wanted to feature that story in the report on business.
So this is a great time for me to ask. Now, you lived in Australia. You lived in other places before coming to Canada and whatnot. And tell us a bit about your upbringing there. How some of the, whether it's culture or business, were different or the same in places outside of Canada. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, sure. Well, Australia, I think there's a lot of parallels between Australians and Canadians. Obviously, the weather is a bit of a difference. But in terms of the people, I think very open, very engaging. They say what they think. I had a wonderful experience living in Australia. I've been asked many times why I left. And sometimes I couldn't really explain it, but I think it was because something was pulling me toward this side of the world, whether it was my career or whether it was, my husband that I met 9 years after I moved here. I think maybe that we don't always know why we do the things that we do. We can't always fully explain them, but I had wonderful parents. I had, a loving family, and it just happened to be that my future ended up here for right now. There's my parents. You've got them up there on the screen.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the story that you shared about your parents and the resilience nature and how it informed your adulthood and your choices in life. And tell us a bit about that story, my friend.
Yes, well, my parents were my father was from Hungary, my mother was from Czechoslovakia, and they were survivors of the Second World War. My mother was a Holocaust survivor. My father was a Russian prisoner of war and a Hungarian prisoner of war. And he moved to Australia in 1952 with very little to his name, but he was always the entrepreneur, always thinking ahead. It's quite a long, incredible story, but he ended up traveling back to Europe in the early 50s, the way that most of us before COVID-19 were traveling. People weren't doing that at that time, but he went to a trade fair in Europe and he met someone there who encouraged him to take this patent to manufacture knitting machines, which he ended up doing and had huge success with it in Australia. A number of years later, he traveled back to Europe and then went to Israel, where he met my mother and married her and brought her back to Australia. And in that first hugely successful business my father had, he did very well. And then for some reason that he could only explain in his own way, that when television came about in Australia, in his beautiful, delightful Hungarian accent, he said to me, well, I guess they started to watch the TV and stopped to buying the knitting machine. Anyway, it was one of a number of different ventures that he had. There I am giving my first speech at the age of 4.
Wow. It goes back. It goes back. So it sounds like speaking is something that you've always enjoyed. Do you have an early story of your early days of speaking to share while we're on this photo here, my friend?
Oh, yeah. Well, that one I have a very vague recollection of. That was in Melbourne in a kindergarten. I mean, just fast forwarding to, when I first went on stage and my first week out on the road, it was incredible because I knew that the experience of being on stage was something that I absolutely loved. But most people have no idea what can happen behind the scenes before you actually get on stage. And it was November 1995, and I had spoken in Vancouver and then immediately travelled to Alberta, and it was minus 18 degrees. Dune, you'd probably appreciate it. That's not even that cold. And I remember landing in Calgary and there was black ice, and I'd never driven on black ice before. And I remember how freaked out I was driving to the hotel the night before. The temperature dropped down to about minus 30 degrees. And in this hotel where I was presenting, it was quite a dumpy place. And all the power went out first thing in the morning. And I remember just wondering how on earth I was going to get ready to go and deliver that first presentation. It was like one bad scenario after the other. But I guess I survived that and carried on. So, a lot of things happened behind the scene. I really should write a book of those stories.
Yeah. So, that's a great photo there. That looks like quite a fun event. Tell us about that. Do you recall where that was, my friend?
Yes, I do. That was in Columbus, Ohio in 2018. That was a huge event with about 2,000 people in the audience. It was for the Canada Lions USA Forum, or USA Canada Lions Leadership Forum, as it's known. It was an absolutely incredible event. I've worked with the clients since then, and we've got plans for me to come back in 2021 and do it again, in Iowa, all being well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So do you do almost as much work outside of Canada as you do within Canada these days, or in general?
Well, when we're not in lockdown, you can be anywhere in the world, that's another great benefit that's come from virtual speaking. I think many people realize this. That's a photo of me speaking at the World Meetings Forum in Mexico. So yes, I've presented in Mexico, I've presented in Europe, I've presented all across the United States. I've presented just about everywhere in Canada, including that's back in Ohio again, including up in the Arctic Circle. I presented in the Arctic Circle in 2016. That was really something, seeing the Northern Lights. And interestingly, actually, let me clarify that. Yes, it was even that time of the year. It was in late August, believe it or not. It was already very cold. And I traveled to Yellowknife and other parts of the Arctic area for several presentations. And if you were up late enough, you could already see some of the Northern Lights at that time. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us, in terms of your, as you think about self-leadership,
yes.
What's one or two kind of pearls of wisdom that you want to share with folks in terms of how does one best prepare to lead themselves more effectively? Are there some ideas that you want to share?
Sure. Now, you've got a photo up there right now where if anybody wants to have a really close look, you can see it's a long time ago in my very first job working at a radio station in Sydney, Australia, Radio 2GB. So that's actually a great story about leading yourself, in that, again, landing that job. There was another recession. So this was in the 80s. I'd mentioned about Catwoman in the early 90s. I wrote after I finished my university degree, I graduated with honours in political science, and I had aspirations of working as a foreign correspondent anywhere in the world. It would have been amazing, and realised that I had a passion for that. So unfortunately, though, when the recession hit, it was really, really difficult. So getting into broadcast journalism, the idea was that I would eventually end up, being able to be that correspondent all over the world. So I wrote to 125 newspapers and radio stations in the state of New South Wales, where I lived. And that's when the radio station actually invited me in for an interview. And I persevered. And although I didn't end up in the newsroom, I did end up 2 floors down in the sales department. And I had a great career in advertising, not knowing at the time that the universe had a different plan for me, and I would be broadcasting internationally in a very different way, which was my speaking career. So I just followed that path, Dune, and took charge of myself by writing those letters, and that's how I began my career.
That's a fantastic story. Again, yet another recession. Again, yet another challenging and difficult time. But again, it turned out to be a fantastic way to really reinvent, to innovate, and so that's how you got into speaking. Hey, is went from radio kind of thing and whatnot into more full focus on professional speaking, again through a difficult, challenging time in history.
Well, that's what it is. Like life, there's no linear path in life. I mean, I often will say, I couldn't have imagined sitting there in that photo that I was going to have the career that I had, some 12 years later, 13 years later, when I started my speaking career in Canada. So yeah, it was quite the journey. But we go through a lot of adversity, Dune, don't we? There's lots of peaks and valleys in life. And I know that the truth is I'm probably going to have more, even though we often feel like we've had fair share and we say out loud, isn't, now what's going to happen? None of us could have imagined what was going to happen this year. So, I believe adversity does make you stronger. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. And that's something I've learned every time I go through one. I've endured the loss of my parents. I've had setbacks in business many, many times over the last 25 years, made some pretty big mistakes, and I'm still standing, so I intend to keep standing for a while longer.
Wonderful. Again, thank you for sharing that. And just a theme and a bit of a reminder for all of us to say, when things are going rough, we have to just reach deeper and trust that there's a way through it. Trust that there's a way to innovate and to evolve. And
yes.
Thank you for sharing that theme with us today. And in terms of the as you think about Canada, I'm just going to put you on the spot a little bit by saying, what is it that you love about Canada? Is there 1 or 2, 3 things that you love about Canada?
Oh my gosh, dude. Well, I landed here in 1990, in the summer of July 1990. And I was on a 1-year holiday, working holiday visa, which now for young Australians, they can get that visa for 3 years. But for me, it was only 1 year. And the moment I saw the mountains and the beauty of British Columbia, I was totally, utterly hooked. And I could not get it out of my system. I just couldn't get it out of my system. So, so the beauty, the majestic mountains, the lifestyle, the people, the opportunity. There are just so many things. Really, it's an incredible, incredible country. And like Australia, it's a land of opportunity. It just felt right for me to aspire to be here on a more permanent basis. So again, a very long story with a lot of adversity. I ended up being able to move here in 1994.
Wonderful. Now, I see some young people in some photos there. Tell us about those fine-looking young people there in some of the photos.
Well, that's my parents again. And that was, there they are as newlyweds. And, they themselves, I think that's another important thing. They themselves were immigrants. And, I know that it was interesting to reflect that I sort of followed a similar trajectory in a way, except, of course, I ended up in Canada.
Yeah. So these young people here,
those young people,
fine people.
Yes, these are my. These are my grandchildren. I never had kids, so I jumped straight to grandchildren. I did it the easy way. I married a wonderful man named Brian, and he has a beautiful daughter, son-in-law, and we have 2 gorgeous grandchildren that I've known since the day they were born. So I've dedicated my next book to them. The title hasn't been revealed yet, but this is a photo of them while I'm holding my manuscript, and I wanted them to be there that particular day because I had a goal of completing my manuscript before a milestone birthday this year. August the 25th was a day before my birthday, and I did complete my book as I had planned, and I wanted them to be there for that moment when I printed out the manuscript. So that's my gorgeous granddaughter, Carrera, and my grandson, Caden, who is now 5'8" and towers over me.
Yeah. Well, fantastic that young people get to, again, share the experience of, working towards a goal and accomplishing it. And those are invaluable lessons to be learning from somebody you love rather than just in books or whatever have you. I think it sticks in a different way, right? When you have a relative, in this case, grandma, who's really serious about that goal, right?
Yes, and it's like everything in life that it's hard because we aspire to try to find that balance. When you set a goal like this to write a book, it's obviously a very time-consuming
project. At the same time, I recognize, and there were times when they were a lot smaller that I really, can look back and say, turn off that computer, turn off that phone. I wish that I'd spent more time. I think it's a really important lesson that, those, and I know you've got a son, and, we've got to treasure every single moment that we have with children and with grandchildren, because it goes past very, very quickly.
We have some of those treasured moments to share here. I'm going to bring in this one here. This is a photo of your trip to France and Nice and all that. Tell us a little bit about that while I bring that up there, my friend. Tell us about that trip and what stories came out of that.
That 2019, in stark contrast to 2020, which is probably why I went into shock, was really one of the best years that I'd ever experienced, because I had a lot of international travel. So my speaking has taken me, as I mentioned earlier, all over the world. And in October 2019, I got to speak in France, and I got to speak more precisely in the French Riviera. So, what a dream that was. It didn't happen by accident. Here I am pictured with my husband in Monaco, and we spent a day traveling to Monaco because my mother had always been a big fan of Grace Kelly, and I made a point of traveling to Monaco in remembering my mother, and that was one very special travel day in that trip. Traveling to the French Riviera just couldn't have been any better than that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yes. And, that came about, and here's another one. This is in Port Douglas in Queensland, and I travelled to Australia in August of 2019, so just a couple of months before going to France, for a mining health and safety conference. And after that conference was over, went to Port Douglas, to the Great Barrier Reef. But I want to say, Dune, that when that speaking engagement came about, I had not necessarily, there I am with my client at the mining conference, I had already made up my mind that I was going to take my grandson to Australia. And I just had that intention, whether or not I got the work. And it was really extraordinary that the work came about at that time. So I was able to do both, and it obviously paid for itself. But I was really determined to have that experience with him, whether or not I was working. And my husband came along too. And ideally, when COVID-19 is over, our plan is to take our granddaughter somewhere too. That is the client that I worked with in the French Riviera. And that was a client that is known as the admissions professionals. So they are individuals who work in independent schools, and they came from all over the world, and their primary responsibility is managing admissions of students to these schools. And this was a woman that I met at an event in the United States who was involved in this conference. And I remember very clearly how I met her, and she gave me her business card, and I was speaking, believe it or not, to a group of only 4 people the morning of this event in Denver. And it was a little circle known as a wisdom circle. She was in that wisdom circle. So that was prior to the other event that I did later on that day. And I stayed in touch with her. Her name is Stephanie. Grabbed that business card. We had a great chat. A couple of days later, I followed up with her. We stayed in contact for several months, and she said, you would be perfect for this event. 6 months after that first meeting, I ended up speaking in Nice at that event.
Right, wonderful. So again, another story of what is seemingly a bit of a down point, where in this case you talk about how the event didn't have many people at all, and because of that, in fact, she was probably able to get a lot of your one-on-one time, being that the group was so small. And through that, you made a connection in a deeper way that might have been possible if it was a large event. So we got to squeeze the juice out of life, whatever it throws at us, right?
And you know what was crazy about that day? I got to tell you, there was a massive snowstorm in Colorado in March 2019, and I think they're much more hardy about snowstorms than we are in Vancouver. So they knew it was going to happen, and still people showed up. So that was one little small part of the day, but people still showed up. There were more people at the event. Yeah. It's just that little event that happened before the big event, I just happened to strike up a conversation with Stephanie at that event.
Yeah. Essentially a pre-convention or pre-event, if you will. And
yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. And as we look at, obviously, wow, how deep did you go just at the surface, I guess, hey? You didn't do the scuba diving way, way deep, did you?
Well, we didn't this is back in the Great Barrier Reef with my grandson. No, we didn't. Not on that particular occasion. This was purely scuba diving. There were people that did go deeper and, so what shall I call it? Not scuba diving, snorkeling.
Snorkeling.
Yeah. We were snorkeling, but there were other people who were scuba diving on that day. But this was just an amazing time with my grandson. I will say, and I get emotional when I look at that picture, that was probably one of the greatest moments of my life, because I wanted to make sure that my husband and I did things that I'd never done growing up in Australia. And I was really terrified of being seasick as we went out to the Barrier Reef, and I was totally taken care of that day because for some reason I wasn't. Many other people on the boat heading out to the reef were sick, and it was perfect weather. So can you imagine if we'd gone out there on the following day? It was not so great, but we chose the best day. Incredible. Fantastic. Yeah.
Again, life is just fantastic. How an unexpected event could bring up so much joy and so much emotions in our life. So we gotta seize those moments. We got to make choices that allow those things to happen, right? Because if we're too busy with work and never bring our family members along and things like that, then we're giving up those the chance to make those special moments, right?
Exactly, Dune. Exactly.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's a big looking fish. Maybe it's the angle, but that's pretty big.
Yeah, they're pretty clever up there in the Barrier Reef with those. If anyone is watching and you aspire to go on the trip, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's worth it. It's totally, totally worth it. They know how to do it really well. You know, they've got underwater photographers. If you don't have your own underwater camera, it was magical.
Yeah. Now, my friend Rob Leonard, I don't know if you know Rob. He's in Calgary area. He said, "Great guest, Dune." And so Rob is a historian. He's a what's called a Alberta history wrangler. So he's an expert in Alberta history and teach a lot of different people. International folks come in and actually take courses and conferences led by Rob. So that's now Dee Aman chimed in and she said, yes, magical.
Yes,
definitely. Yes. Yeah. So as you think about, again, speaking and whatnot, we were doing more of the virtual speaking these days, and I think that will be kind of with us for a little while and whatnot. I suppose the experience of virtual speaking will not necessarily afford these kinds of opportunities, but we'll have to be creative about how we bring out some of those valuable lifelong moments, even through virtual speaking somehow.
You know, it's true. And I do think that, as I mentioned, I think that there is a lot of opportunity with it. I think because it makes the world a much smaller place. Mm-hmm. So it's all, it's like everything in life. It's how you decide to see it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's something that you can really engage people with the right stories and the right the right props and the right messages, and there's so much you can do visually. So it's certainly been something that I've got to enjoy. I've become, how can I put it? I've become familiar with and now can enjoy delivering that way. And I also do very much look forward to being back on stage.
You bet. Alexandra Bonnet from Germany. She says, listening from Germany. Thanks for the stories, Michelle.
You're so welcome, Alexandra. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, imagine, I think about it as in the old days when there was just plays, and that's, theater is all we had, until, movies came along and the video camera. I think, people back then, you can imagine them being uncertain about how this new medium was going to kind of interrupt their previously known world, right? Live theater, live, whatever have you. And they're great. But certainly we have seen, as history has proven, that there's a place for movies and there's a place for TVs in our culture, right?
Definitely. And as I said, I think, this is it's a medium that has been around, but now, people are using it more than ever. It's helped us to be more connected to each other. And I think that has actually been one of the biggest, if the right word is benefits, that it has helped people appreciate more the value of human connection. And so, while we're just gravitating towards this because it helps us to connect. And I think when the time comes that we can physically connect on a greater scale, the way that we used to, I know for myself, I think I'm going to appreciate it that much more. I think that's such a big plus, that we have developed a greater sense of appreciation for the simplest things in life that we used to take for granted before this virus.
Yeah. Perspective is a wonderful thing, and we certainly are gaining some clarity of some new stuff here. Now, I want to share with our viewers some of the TV interviews and those kinds of journeys that you make with your speaking as well. I'm going to bring in this photo here and tell us what your thoughts are on the importance of engaging with the established media as well, as I bring in this particular photo here. Let me just go ahead and do that. And
So, the thing about that, I remember that it was such a magical time, Dune, because in 2013, when it was the first big year of release of my book, Lead Yourself First, I worked with an incredible pair of publicists who specialized in book publicity. And there's a really big difference with PR people who specialize in getting the word out there about your book. So this particular individual helped me to get publicity in, this photo was taken in at the CTV studios in Montreal, actually. And one of the things that both publicists who were involved in the entire experience with me, and many other local publicists that they put me in touch with who organized this kind of publicity, they really briefed me well on how to be ready for the kinds of questions that the media are going to be asking you. So if you anticipate, like anything in life, if you anticipate, then you can be better prepared. So that really helped me to have success with those interviews. That was in Edmonton, and I think that was another CTV interview in Edmonton that you're looking at, and great camera angles. I think it might have been me taking a photo after the fact, or someone else was there and took the photo for me. I think that was more for that one. Yeah, so I could use those photos and repurpose them on my website and other places.
Yeah, it's the behind the scene kind of photo, if you will.
Exactly. Yes, there it is there. It was great. It was such an amazing time to get all that publicity. I'm going to do it again with the next book, Dune.
Yeah, wonderful. Well,
yes.
Again, thank you for sharing your journey with the world. And I know as we learn more things, we have more to offer the world. And so, in a sense, COVID has been tough on all of us, and I'm sure it's been tough on you at different levels and different ways. But as you grapple with that, and as you overcome and innovate, I think you have more to offer the world than you did before. Would be my perspective on it.
I agree. I think that we have choices on how we decide to see things. And there you go. There's John Tory when he still had his radio show. Mm-hmm. You know, now he's in a different role, of course, in Ontario.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Fantastic. Now, I want to ask you a different question, and that is, let me just see here. Thank you, folks, for chiming in, whether it's D. Amand or Rob Leonard or Alexandra Bonet. If you have questions for Michelle, please chime in through the comment section there, and we'll get Michelle to kind of talk with them. But the next question I have, Michelle, is as you think about keynote speaking and training,
yes.
Do you have a preference of one over the other in terms of if you could just do a whole lot of just one and not the other? Is there one that sort of wins out, or are they both?
Oh, that's not fair.
They both resonate well with you.
Listen, honestly, I love both. You know, it can be even more challenging to prepare a keynote speech for 1 hour or 45 minutes than it can be to prepare a whole day of training. And I do really enjoy both, and I cut my teeth on giving workshops. That's how I started my career. So you know, honestly, I love them both. I do very much enjoy giving speeches, and that's what I was doing predominantly before COVID-19. But I also give workshops and do that virtually now, as well as in person when the time is right.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, I'm curious, do you do any coaching as well? And is that something that you want to do more of? Or speak a little bit about coaching as a area of work for you.
Yes, well, leadership coaching definitely is something that I really enjoy, because I like being able to connect one-on-one and, you know, have those private conversations with people who are in an influential role where they really do need to be the best versions of themselves, to have that awareness of their actions, their communication skills, their plans, their strategies, and to be always thinking about people, always thinking about how the role that they play affects other people. So if I can play a small part in helping them to be better at what they do, I really relish those opportunities. I have done some personal coaching, which is different to leadership coaching, life coaching. I can do it. I choose at this time to focus on more of the professional side because I find that that's a greater strength that I have.
Right. So more on performance coaching and not as much of the life coaching focus.
Yeah, I guess, you know, when I say it's a strength, maybe the better way of putting that, it's just not something that I've chosen to focus on, although I have done it. I find that the opportunities with leadership coaching and professional realm have worked for me.
Yeah. Now, I do want to bring in perhaps another video here. Tell us about there's one here that says. Actually, do you happen to know which video you'd like to share with our viewers next, my friend? I'm going to put you on the spot.
I'm not sure how many I gave. Oh,
it's one that says negativity in the workplace.
Yes.
There's virtual demo. There's authentic leadership and the difference between. Right?
Let's. You want to play the negativity one? That'd be great.
Yeah, I will bring that in now.
Okay.
As I bring it in, do give it a quick intro so I can have time to cue it in here, Michelle. Go ahead.
Okay, so this was fantastic. This was an opportunity I had to work with one of our good friends, Dune, David Papp, at MTech in Edmonton, and I went into his studio on more than one occasion, and we recorded a number of videos for my Leadership Insights series, which is on my YouTube channel and has quite a big subscription. I'd like to continue to grow it. And we recorded several videos. This one was more of an interview style. Many of them were, me simply speaking right to the camera like I am right now. And this particular video was all about negativity, because I feel so strongly that it is one of the most destructive forces that's out there. And many people ask me how to deal with negativity, especially negativity that they experience from other people. So I provide some ideas here with this video.
Negativity is one of the most disruptive forces operating in today's organisations. Negativity can feed on itself, just like positivity can feed on itself. And when you as a leader demonstrate any negativity, be aware of the consequences, because people will model what they see. It's amazing how many times people have said to me that they are always exposed to some kind of a pity party. Someone will say, this is really bad. And then another person will say, I know, it couldn't get any worse. Then the conversation will go along those lines. Yes, it's terrible. And then the other person will say it's shocking. And then before we know it, we have catastrophized everything together. It's astounding to me how people are allowing for this negativity to continue, and how rampant it is, and how easy it is to simply put a stop to it when we all decide to practice the opposite. So when you make a decision to approach everything from a solution-orientated vantage point, then you will begin to see, obviously, a different result. Remember, the power of negativity is as powerful as the power of positivity.
It's true.
Definitely true story for sure.
Yeah.
And, again, energy and mindset, those two things are so important in our not only personal life, but professional life as well. So what kind of energy do we bring to the table, and what kind of mindset do we exercise on a consistent, regular basis, right?
Exactly. In fact, this morning, another one of our friends I was listening to that you and I know very well is Wayne Lee. Mm-hmm. And he's been doing these incredible meditation morning sessions pretty much every day, every weekday for many, many months now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he knows that I listen, but I do, even if I don't catch it live. But that's what, he talks about that. And I think it's so, so true. And I too need to fill my head with those messages, so they will override the negative messages, or the doubt, or the fear, or the angst. So it does definitely play a role. And I read somewhere a long time ago that our brain has the capacity to think negatively far greater than it does to think positively, that the ratio of negative thoughts to positive is 5-1. So that's a pretty astounding statistic. And the reason for that is that we are pre-conditioned, and it's part of our fight or flight response to be very cautious. The future. To be very cautious, and when we try to protect ourselves instantly, subconsciously in every situation. So if that makes sense, the inner critic is always going. To put it very simply, the inner critic is always saying, is it safe to be here? Even if we don't say the words out loud. So that's why we have that capacity to think negatively more than positively. We have to train our brains to do the opposite.
Yeah. So again, it's sort of a self-preservation instinct that we have to kind of keep ourselves away from danger. Yes. But it can definitely marginalize what we can focus on if we let it sort of go out of control, I guess, eh?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us, Michelle, I'm going to share with our viewers one of your videos where you really demonstrate how you've gotten onto this virtual platform and virtual presentation and again, certified virtual presenter and all that stuff. But tell us the story of how that came about, this whole virtual thing. Maybe tell us your evolution of, March and April and May and, how it was, and perhaps how June and July and August and how we are now in December. Give us a brief story on that before I roll that clip, my friend.
Well, if you could all see around my office right now, it's really been completely transformed. Mm-hmm. I haven't had to go and get thousands of dollars worth of equipment, but I've got enough that works for me. The only thing I don't have in here right now is the green screen. It's actually in another room. Mm-hmm. But, just listening and learning from others who, have the wisdom, and early on going in as many meetings as possible where people were teaching some of these fundamental skills. I started doing that almost immediately, and just, taking it one step at a time. Ironically, seeing you're asking me, I'll say it. One of the first things I did buy was that Yeti microphone. Mm-hmm. And then I, started buying lighting and getting the pieces that I needed and getting my standing desk and realized that I've got a good camera already through my Mac laptop, and just continuing to work it and practice it and learn from other people, because I don't know it all. So once I, really felt comfortable and confident and seized opportunities, that I was ready to then, create my own virtual speaking demo to show and showcase some of the work that I've done with some of my clients. That's a little bit of a history behind it, Dune.
Yeah, I'm going to hit play here and we're going to enjoy that journey together. Folks, again, the theme here is that during tough times, like we are going through right now with COVID, and during tough times that Michelle has been through several times before in her career. She's seen a downturn many times before, and the theme has always been figure out what you need to do to move yourself forward to kind of continue the journey. So I'm going to hit play here on this here. So.
Hi, I'm Michelle Ray, and I want to welcome you to my virtual studio. I work with leaders and teams who want to take the lead, ignite change, and anticipate the future with confidence. Now that we're working in this virtual world of meetings and conferences and events, my clients are telling me that they want people to have a dynamic online experience. And I've found that the best way to deliver my content is through stories, use of props, and practical strategies that keep people fully engaged. I love presenting in person, and I've been honored to have fantastic experiences on stages throughout the world. We're all social beings, and we do have an innate desire to connect. The amazing thing about virtual presentations is that you can interact with participants in a unique, instantaneous, and spontaneous way through the live chat feed. You can even pre-record a keynote and then join in while attendees are watching. My keynotes and workshops are designed to be interactive, engaging, and thought-provoking. Just like in-person events, I'll work with you to learn as much as I can in advance about your event to ensure that as I prepare the content, the topic will be highly customized for your attendees. I want to help make your event a meaningful and memorable experience for all participants. You can be assured that your group will leave the experience ready to tap into their inner strengths. Most importantly, they'll have strategies and ideas that can apply long after the event ends.
Fantastic. Look at that, folks. There's the contact information there, her website, of course, at www.michelleray.com. So first name, last name.com, michelleray.com, and her phone number is on there. 1-877-773-2561. So get in touch with Michelle if you have a need that she can help you with and serve you and your organization. So Michelle,
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a different question. When I reach out and say, hey, I know you're very busy with all the different things that you're working on, but let's come on here for an hour and a bit if you have time to kind of chat about various things and share it with our viewers. Was there a topic that you want to get into that we haven't gotten to yet, my friend? We're not done yet. I just want to make sure that we get to a point where if you had something that you wanted to talk about that I haven't brought out yet, that we go ahead and go there next.
Well, I think I know there's one other little video you've got there, but I think one thing that really is important and has become important not only in the speaking world or the virtual world, and it's the idea of authenticity. Because I think that authenticity is something that people are craving from leaders, from everybody. Now that this virtual realm has definitely, as I said before, helped us connect more, but it's also brought us a lot closer. I mean, you're coming right into my place right now. So, I mean, people want to see the real you. And, for some people, trying to find that balance between how transparent they should be or not isn't that easy. And I think it is something that if you can work on that skill of, how do you work on a skill of being yourself? And then I've had other people say, well, if I am myself, I'm not really that nice. So maybe I shouldn't try that hard to be myself. So there are different ways of looking at it. I just think in a nutshell, people they just want to see the heart and soul of who you are so that they can understand you better and connect with you better, no matter what your role is in life. And the more we let that part of ourselves out, no matter who we're having a conversation with, it doesn't matter what their title is, it doesn't matter what they do for a living. That's not what matters. What matters is their character. And so if you can just make a point of remembering, to just let your true self out, because really we're all like this. And that's the best way to be in life, I've found. Then I think we can have more success.
Wonderful. I definitely agree with all of that. And in terms of the next video, it's a very short one. We could even either share a authentic leadership, the difference between hearing and listening, or we can share the core message on it really does start with you. Which one would you like to go there next, Michelle?
Oh boy. You're putting me on. You can play the hearing and listening one, sure.
Okay, let me hearing and listening. Let me go ahead and do that here, and bring it in, and let's enjoy that together here, folks. Yeah, let's go ahead and make it happen here.
Well, there's probably nothing more unattractive, in my view, than a leader who lacks the capacity to listen. And listening and hearing are two very different things. So an authentic leader is always paying attention, doing a lot less talking and a lot more listening. And interestingly, the capacity to listen also means that someone may share a viewpoint that is very different to yours. And you possess the ability to listen to that viewpoint, even if it is different, even if you do disagree. And you can actually let that person know that you want to hear more about that opinion that's different to yours. So these are things that we may not necessarily think about every day. When you do find yourself in a situation where there's a room full of people who do have different opinions to you, this is something you're going to remember. It comes in very handy because remember this, the same letters that are in the word listen are also in the word silent.
Fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes I would joke with audiences and say, is that too deep for you? I listen and they're silent, but it's a great, someone shared it with me on a plane and I just thought it was fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's one of the, when I do a lot of leadership training or management development work, one time there was a fairly young fellow on the very first day, as we just finished the introduction, he said, hey, Dune, you know, how could I, you know, if there's one thing I would do better, that would make my work better at the office. And I said, well, that's a pretty big question, but I said listening was, in fact, the one thing. If there was just one thing that we can all become better at, listening is in fact that one thing. We all know it. The question is, do we do it often enough? Do we do it consistently? And do we do it when it's absolutely necessary, right?
I agree, totally.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to actually go ahead and play the other one as well. So the other one is called It Really Does Start With You. Tell us about that before I cue it up. It's a very short video as well, but tell us about that. It really does start with you.
Thank you. I think that we hear a lot about accountability, and accountability, we attach negative connotations to the word accountability. So when I started speaking more and more about personal leadership, and it starts with you, it just sounds like a softer way of putting it. It's also been a very successful speech to say leadership starts with you, because everything starts with us. And if we can remember that in our personal and our professional lives, that I think it makes us all better. And I haven't mastered it. I don't think I'll ever arrive at that destination, because we are all, you know, trying every day to just get better and better if we put in the effort to get better and better. So everybody contributes to the atmosphere. So in our workplaces, you know, in our families, we all play a role. It's not just up to one person or to a leader to set the atmosphere. We all do it, each and every one of us.
So no matter what your role is in an organisation, no matter what industry you work in, it's not about a title. What's really important is to understand that it really does start with you. Whether you're frontline, whether you're a senior leader, whether you're running the company, running the business. And this is something that I am so passionate about. And I want everyone to understand that we are all ultimately accountable. We are all ultimately responsible for creating the atmosphere. We all make a contribution every day that leads to a particular culture. So really, it's about you. It's about you being conscious of who you are, and it's about your character that truly matters above all else. What are you doing on a daily basis to make a difference in yourself, with your colleagues, with everyone that you interact with, and being cognizant of the fact that leadership is all about who you are?
Absolutely, absolutely. Which reminds me of a wonderful HR quote that we've heard for decades and decades and long time. I don't know who to even attribute it to, but it says, who you are speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you're saying. So again, right? The idea of the same words, the same sentiment could be expressed by one person, and we would interpret that to be quite different than if it came from another person. So it's not just what you say, and it's not just how you say it, it's actually who is saying that.
Absolutely. And I just want to add to that, Dune, that I think that in the future, and as we watch, you know, coming out of this pandemic and younger people getting more in, you know, becoming the majority in the workforce, that is so important. And leaders need to be more aware of it than ever before. I actually dedicated quite a bit of time researching this and included this in my next book. In fact, I've got a chapter that's called Voices Rising, and it's all about the rise of employee activism and in some ways, it's even stronger than unionism, or the modern day version of it, if you will, because people have a voice today and they're using that voice. They're using it in social media. They're using it on a mass scale. And this is something that has been around now for, well, ever since we started using social media on a mass scale, probably the last 10 years or so, but it's amplified even more, and even through the pandemic. So, some leaders, some organizations, they really don't know how to navigate through that. But I would just say, the most important thing you can do is never match fire with fire. Understand that you can acknowledge other people and their viewpoint, even if you don't agree with it. So have a candid conversation. Try to understand more about why people feel so strongly about the issues that they do, why these issues have now developed into worldwide movements, and see if you can, as a leader especially, tune into that more and see what you can do to get on the same page and develop a greater understanding and interest in positions that are different to yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to take a bit of a different path for a couple minutes here. For our viewers who may or may not be aware, of course, at our national convention of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers last Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. On Tuesday, Michelle did a fantastic, fabulous, wonderful, tear. We were all in tears, I think, throughout your stories there. Now, I don't imagine that a story that you share and the keynote that was about 30 minutes or so, or 30 some minutes, can really be compressed into a few minutes here in any sort of organized way. But I would love to hear maybe just a part of that story or a summation of that story for you to share with our viewers about really, again, the message around resilience and how important it is, and how we all have a certain amount of resilience that we can learn from others, and we can exercise ourselves and whatnot. So for the next few minutes, I would love to hear a condensed version of that moving and powerful keynote that left us all in tears and tugged at our heartstring and really motivated us to, again, focus on resilience. Tell us your version of impromptu compression of that 30-some minute there, if you like.
Absolutely. I'll be delighted to. So the 3 habits of highly resilient people are to rethink, respond, and rebound. And rethink is all about how we decide to see a situation. When I was 11 years old, or just before my 11th birthday, I have a strong memory of my father sitting in our living room unemployed. And I had never seen him like that. And it left a very strong impression on me. And at that time, my mother became our sole breadwinner. She would travel for more than 2 hours round trip to the southern suburbs of Sydney, where she opened a small retail clothing outlet. And it was how our family were able to make ends meet, only barely. Again, another recession. This was in the early 1970s, or a very tight economic climate. And my father, being at home, unemployed, going for job interviews was just such a foreign concept to me. And my mother going out to work when previously she had been able to stay home and look after me and my brother. And we were very fortunate because my parents had dear friends that lived upstairs, the Dales, and Mr. Dale, who kindly came downstairs one evening to speak to my parents, offered my father a partnership in his business. And my father had never been anybody's partner. He was a solopreneur. He liked to go out there and do it himself. But he took up Mr. Dale, who I called Uncle Tony, on that offer, and they had a lot of success together. And that was really my first example, as I was putting the keynote together, of individuals who, my father was definitely one of them, who could reframe, rethink his situation and make it better for himself, even if it meant that he got out of his comfort zone. It proved to be the right decision. So he was then able to respond to what was happening around him. Despite the economy, despite the uncertainty, he was able to take a step back. And this is the difference between people who respond to life and people who react to life. He was able to take a step back and observe himself in his own experience instead of reacting, which is all about being emotionally driven and catching what we all know as the herd mentality, buying into the negativity. He instead was able to respond and take a thoughtful and highly thought through, considerate approach to what was happening by making his own decision, carving out his own path. So that was the first step that he took in his journey to change his own circumstances by responding. And of course, as a result of that, he was able to rebound from his own adversity and turn the situation around for himself. One of the memories I have of working in that business that he and Uncle Tony set up on school holidays and weekends, it was just wonderful when I could go into the store, was watching how my father would interact with the customers. And it really was an adventure. It was like a reality TV show before there was reality TV. And, you know, people would come in and they would buy fur coats and they would buy evening dresses. And they also sold discounted merchandise, some of which, as I said, was some of the ugliest clothes I've ever seen in my life. And one of them was this little pink dress. And this little pink dress was, for whatever reason, something that was in demand by the population that lived in the area. They wanted to buy that little pink dress for their little girls' confirmations and special events and weddings, family occasions. And my father realized that when that pink dress was selling so well, that he could be even more successful with that little pink dress by going to some of his contacts from his manufacturing days, taking the little pink dress with him and getting one of his contacts to make a close copy, not an exact copy, of that little pink dress for himself and have huge success selling that pink dress. So if my father could find that little pink dress, I ask you, as you're watching this video, what is, on your or live presentation as we're on live, what is your pink dress? What is that one thing that you can do to differentiate yourself? That one element of your business that you can develop to be more successful? That one thing that you are passionate about, no matter what the situation. And all of that is a response to adversity. And when we do that, it's amazing what can happen. That's how I would describe in my own life, ideally, that I'm going to have my book as that little pink dress. And again, we are always going to be hit by peaks and valleys in life. And although that was a very positive time coming through the adversity, it certainly wasn't the end for my parents. And my father, one of the most difficult times that he faced in his life wasn't necessarily business related. In fact, it was far more personal. And that was when my mother, the woman he was married to for more than 50 years, got acute dementia, So this amazing woman who could no longer walk or speak, who used to speak 5 languages, as did my father, was in a very dire way. And my father became her primary caregiver. And he did that until it was absolutely impossible, because she was really in a bad way. And I know that many people try to take care of their family member, their loved one, as long as they can, but it became very evident that she needed a higher level of care. And my father used every skill that he ever learned in business to take care of that one relationship. The most significant relationship that he had was with my mother. Even though all the naysayers were out there in force and said, you'll never get her into a facility, they're all full, it will never happen, it's impossible, there's a 12-month waiting list. My father was able to do it in 13 weeks. And he did that because he was an influencer and he was a collaborator. And he knew how to use those skills when it mattered the most. So although my mother didn't rebound from this illness that eventually was the last illness that she had, my father was able to show us what was possible, both myself and my brother, by using the right mindset. And he determined his own path and the path for my mother, despite everybody telling him that it was impossible. And what that taught me, and to apply this right now as we are coming out of this incredibly difficult time, is that I can choose to rebound. And I am not going to lie down after 25 years and give up. Every time I think of them, it gives me that strength. So I believe for all of us, resilience is innate and resilience is in our DNA. All we need to do is decide whether or not we are going to tap into it. Every single adversity and challenge that we've experienced in our life has taught us something. It's just that we don't necessarily know it until we have the opportunity to experience it and go there and draw that out of ourselves. And that's what I'm choosing to do.
Thank you so much for sharing a summary version of that journey with our viewers today again. And again, the whole idea is that in many ways, these COVID times are unprecedented, but in many ways, we've been here before. As human beings, we've been here before in different ways, different challenges. But really, it's resilience is not new. DNA is not new. Just the variation of how it plays out in COVID-19 is different. But it's a reminder for all of us that good humans will always make it through tough times when they apply themselves, right?
And we know it's true, and there's been so much loss, and there's obviously people that have really suffered through losing loved ones and people who are very sick. And I have not had that experience, although I haven't personally had the experience. Mm-hmm. I have known people that have passed away and have been extremely ill. Mm-hmm. And I believe for those who have gone through this or are currently going through this, in the pain, we will emerge stronger. And there are others who have gone before me, and I think for all of us in life that have experienced so much worse, and we can be grateful for the the level of adversity that we've experienced. Is for some people it's been much bigger, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you again for sharing that. And I wanted to switch it up a little bit and possibly play one more video here. And you might be surprised to hear what the name of the video. Let me just pull it in here. It is called, North America's Greatest Speaker Top 10 2012. Would you like to do a quick intro? It's a bit of a fun time. Tell us about that before I bring in the video.
Oh, yes. I think I drove everybody crazy with that. North America's Next Greatest Speaker 2012 was a concept that started from an incredibly brilliant woman by the name of Sandra Yancey, who is the founder of the eWomen Network. And she has many people that are members of her network. But this particular year, they decided to have the competition, and it was the first year where not only did they have a great competition, but a very brilliant marketing exercise where I think they had over 1 million people subscribing to their newsletters and their offerings. And many of those individuals had voted for the North America's Next Greatest Speaker. So you needed, if you wanted to be part of this competition, you needed to submit a 90-second video, a collage or any kind of speaking video, and then have people vote on all of the videos that were submitted. And then it went from the top, 50 to 25 to the top 10. And then I was invited to be on the stage with the 9 other top 10 speakers in Dallas, Texas, at the eWomen Annual Conference, eWomen Network Annual Conference in 2012. This was the video.
Fantastic. I'm going to hit play here, and we'll have fun with this.
Titles don't impress people. Character does. What are we going to be remembered for? Who we are or what we do? The most successful person, in my view, is the one that has that right attitude.
We can start having negative thoughts before we even leave the house. In fact, we don't even have to be out of bed. All we do is we open our eyes and we just turn around and look at who's lying next to us. Here's the key. Leadership is a state of mind. It has nothing to do with our job title. So we need to be practicing personal leadership with everybody, with our colleagues, because let me ask you this, do our internal relationships affect our external relationships? Let's focus on what's within our control. Regardless of what might be going on around you, regardless of the politics, regardless of someone else's negativity. That's the beauty of being counterintuitive. Let's all go out there and keep reminding ourselves to make the difference. Thank you.
Fun.
Great memories of that one.
Yeah. So as we round the corner and wrapping up here, Michelle, I'd love for you to perhaps take us out in whatever way you like in terms of winding it down, do some summarizing. If you do sing us a song if you like, or part of a song. If you like to make a call to action in times like this, feel free to leave our viewers with any concluding remarks here, Michelle.
Well, the first thing that came into my mind, and I'm not going to remember, I don't think I'm going to remember it, every line of this poem, but there's been many people that have tried to find the original source of the poem, and it's by, I believe it's Mother Teresa, and it's called Anyway. Mm-hmm. And I know I may not recall every line of it perfectly, but it goes something along these lines. People are unreasonable, irrational, and illogical. Love them anyway. If you do good, people may attack you when you help them. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Do good anyway. And when you go out there and give the world the best you've got, you might get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you've got. Anyway.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And folks, friends, you have been listening to the wonderful Michelle Ray. And Michelle, thank you so much for your spending time with us today. And thank you for sharing of your story, your journey, and your insights along the way. And much appreciated, my friend.
It is such a pleasure, Dune. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your wonderful program.
Mm-hmm. So, folks, again, you've been listening to Michelle Ray. Feel free to visit her website again at michelleray.com. And of course, she has a YouTube channel and Facebook pages and all of those kinds of things, social media presence there. You can follow and continue to get more insights from the content that she has out there. But have a wonderful day, folks. And till we meet again, take good care of yourself. Take good care of one another. Talk to you soon.